All right, everybody. Welcome to an Esoterica live stream. I haven't done these at what feels like absolutely forever. I think the last time I did one of these was probably back around Halloween or something like that. It was a while. I took a good bit of the month of November off just because I needed a break. You can imagine things get pretty busy around Halloween around here, and so after the the slog that was October, I really had to get some downtime, and I really appreciate folks' patience as I took a few weeks off to get some traveling done and just to get some rest. And but now I'm back. It's really great to be back and making content again. Um, have We've had a good last cycle of content creation. I got to make an episode on John Winthrop Jr., which I've been wanting to do for a long time. I know that's a bit of a niche thing to want to do, but I think Winthrop Jr. is actually was one of the most interesting of all these colonial characters, and I made the argument that he was in fact the first American occultist, and so it was really funny to get into him and sort of see in the surprising ways in which Puritanism and Hermeticism, or Puritanism and occultism, weirdly overlap. It's the shared interests that Andy over at Attaché Films and I have, and so we're able to do those, and it was um, really great. And then we rolled back into the good old fashioned Demiurge series that everyone seems to love for some reason. I don't know what it is about the Demiurge that everyone seems to love this topic, but yeah, we got into some of more of the topic around the Demiurge, and really getting into Simon of Samaria, which I'm going to do in a whole episode on Simon of Samaria at some point, and going to team up with David Litwa, Matthew David Litwa, to do an episode on Simon of Samaria. And then, of course, last week we did the episode on Baal, which another episode that folks have really been interested in for whatever reason, is specifically this sort of Canaanite mythology. And I guess I do get why people are interested in Canaanite mythology. One, because it has this interesting tie-in, of course, with Hebrew Bible stuff, but also I think that Canaanite mythology doesn't really get its day in the sun compared to Mesopotamian mythology, to Egyptian mythology, Greek mythology. In many ways, Canaanite mythology is really not really talked about very much, and so it was really fun to make an episode on the Baal cycle. I'm sure I'll come back around and do another episode on Asherah, and yeah, do one on Asherah. I want to do one on Kothar Vachasis, the sort of the Hephaestus-like character, who's super interesting. One of the things that's really interesting about Kothar is that he seems to live not in Canaan. He's associated either with Crete, which was known at that time as like an important center for, I think, for copper. I think it was a copper mine there. In fact, I think that it's even named that. But at any rate, he was either associated with that, or he was associated with Egypt too. And so Kothar is a really interesting character just in general. So, but yeah, I'll come back to do some more episodes on Canaanite mythology, and just because I think it's interesting. I'd also like to do some episodes on Hittite mythology. Um, Hittite mythology also doesn't get a lot of play, and what's interesting really about Hittite mythology is that it is an interesting, very early expression of Indo-European mythology. The Hittites spoke an Indo-European language, and they have an interesting. They're just interesting in general. One of the things that really makes the Hittites interesting is that they kind of like hoovered up a lot of local religion, so much so that a great deal of religious texts that we have from that time period were actually found among Hittite material. And so, what's interesting about that is the Hittites seem to have had an interest in cultic texts, and in fact, there even was a new language, an Indo-European language, discovered in Hattusa, that was one of these texts that they collected. So yeah. At any rate, I may do something on Teshub and Hittite mythology, which is which is, I think, pretty fascinating stuff. But yeah, a lot more new content to come. Trying to um, trying to think what's coming up next. A lot of good stuff. I think that one of the things I really want to cover will probably be the next thing I'm going to cover is going to be the Chaldean oracles. Really looking forward to cover the Chaldean oracles. What a fascinating, weird little group of texts, which have unfortunately not survived, but were so fascinating that some of the smartest people in antiquity, people like Proclus and Iamblichus, wrote extensive commentaries on them, and so really fascinating to get into the Chaldean oracles. We'll do that episode, I think, probably next week, and yeah, a lot of stuff coming up. But yeah, it's nice to be back on the live stream. Like I said, I don't think I've been on a live stream since probably Halloween or something around then, a long time. So good to be back on the live stream, and good to be hanging out with folks. What else is going on? I should mention something about the incantation bowls. Here are some of the incantation bowls. I have almost all of them. Here's another one. It's an incantation bowl ASMR. Here's another one. They're all featuring Lilith, and these are all hand done. So every one of these is slightly different from the next. You can even see that they're all even slightly different sizes and uses of clay. And there's another one again with crazy looking Lilith in the middle. But folks have wondered why they're not out yet, why they're not available yet. And the simple answer is this, folks. I was looking at shipping times, and I did not want anyone to order them with the expectation that they would be able to get them before the holidays, Christmas or Hanukkah or Kwanzaa or whatever your holidays are. And rather than release them and then have to try to ship them all in the middle of the holiday season, I decided hold back on making them available until after the first of the year. So after the first of the year, I have 50 of them. I only have 50. And once they're out and they're sold, that'll be that. So I may do another run at some point, but there will be 50 incantation bowls made specifically for Esoterica fans, and they will be available after the first of the year. Also, I'm going to be doing some traveling during the holidays, and so I wouldn't be able to ship people's stuff out until I got back, and so I didn't want to again make them available and them not be able to be shipped. So that's the reason. So they will be available after the first of the year, sometime in January. So look for a custom Esoterica incantation bowls with each one of them is hand done with an incantation that I actually wrote in Aramaic. This is actually a completely novel incantation that I wrote in Aramaic for these specific bowls, and each bowl will come with a transcription and a translation of the incantation, so you actually know what the incantation says. And also, one of the things I'm going to do is once the bowls go live, I'm going to release the incantation just publicly. Anyone can use it. And so if you don't want to buy a bowl, or you can't afford to buy one of these bowls, you can make your own, and you're more than welcome to use the incantation that I wrote. I cannot guarantee the efficacy of said incantation, but you're welcome to use it. So I'll publish the incantation publicly once the bowls come out, and so anyone can have them. Anyone can make them then. So that's the update on the incantation bowls. The update on the Absinthe. Sadly, there is no update on the Absinthe. It is still only available at Eastern Market here in Detroit. So if you find yourself in Detroit, you can get it at Eastern Market. But after the first of the year, I'm talking to the distillers, and we're going to try to get it available at a national distributor. And hopefully after the first of the year, hopefully before I leave to go to Egypt, it'll be available during national distribution. So as soon as it is available to order, I will let everyone know. But some folks have had it. There's a person I saw in the chat with the great Macho Man Randy Savage of blessed memory. He's had it. Some other folks have had it. So I think it came out pretty good. I'm pretty happy with it, and hopefully, like I said, it'll be available after the first of the year. But again, the wheels on this stuff turn slow, folks. I wish I could make them go faster, but I cannot do it. So so there's that. But this is the major updates. There still is a sale going on over at the bookstore. If you're interested in an Esoterica, extremely old book, you still get the discount over there. That's still going on, and yeah, a lot going on the channel. Sometimes I when I say out loud all the things that I'm up to and developing on this channel, I'm like, oh wow, that's why I have literally no time, because I am constantly trying to do something new and interesting, esoterica related, whether it's incantation bowls, absinthe, making new content, doing this, doing traveling, doing seminars, trying to do all kinds of stuff. So yeah, a lot going on, but all good stuff. And again, all very much thanks to the support that I get from Patreon folks and from just folks watching the channel, leaving great comments and all of that. So with all thanks to everyone on the channel who supports it by chatting and yeah, hanging out on live streams like this. So yeah, Sean's with the great Macho Man Randy Savage icon. Yeah, Easter Market's a cool spot, and Detroit City Distillery, those are all cool people. So hopefully we'll get it. We'll get the absinthe distributed. So I think, yeah, I'm pretty sure they're open. So yeah, so hang around for a little bit today, answer some questions. Yeah, I'm trying to think of anything else like channel news wise that's worth mentioning. Nothing immediately jumps to mind. I guess another big news that it matters is this office that you see here. That this is where I work. This is my actual office. As you may know, this office was never meant to be a YouTube studio slash office where I work in slash live stream space and all this. In fact, gotten completely unwieldy in here. And I just met with with my general contractor, who I really like, which is a rare thing to be able to say that you like your general contractor. But he and I just walked through the plans to completely gut this entire room. We are gutting this room to the we're gutting the studio basically to the studs, and we are going to build an entire library, a whole library in this space. We're going to library, YouTube studio. So all of this is going to be completely redone pretty soon, starting here. Starting here, and I think we're going to start the major run of the renovation once I get back from Egypt. And so we are going to be documenting the entire process of tearing down and building up what is basically Esoterica library slash studio 2.0. So that's also going to be a fun project to document. What is not going to be a fun project is boxing up and moving all of these books into storage in order to do the work of gutting all this and doing all that. So all this stuff is going to have to go into boxes. I'm not looking forward to packing it all, but it is going to all get done. So I'm going to start the process of packing it all up pretty soon, and we're going to gut this room and build a much more functional YouTube studio and a much more functional library, because these bookshelves are falling apart. None of this is working, so it is going to be a huge project, but I'm looking forward to it. But let me grab some questions. I see some questions coming through. You have questions? Obviously, I'll definitely get to them if you can throw them into a super chat. But I also try to get through all the questions I can, regardless of whether you use super chat or not, because it's not fair that just because you don't have money, you should not get your question into. That wouldn't be fair. So let me try to grab some questions, folks. Feel free to throw them in the chat, and I'll get to them if I can. All right. Congratulations. Submitted some applications for masters in medieval literature. I wish you the very best. Graduate school is really a thing. So I wish you the best. Yeah, it should be great. Love to see some collabs with Dr. Angela Pucco where she demonstrates the rituals that I talk about, like these incantation bowls. I mean, so far as we know, we don't know of anything about any rituals associated with these incantation bowls. They were just buried. They were basically buried underneath the lintel of a house, and sometimes in a room, and buried upside down like this. So we don't really know of any rituals typically associated with them, aside from the fact that they were meant to keep demons out of a house. But in this case, we know very little about what the actual incantation, how the incantation bowls were made, and we don't know what rituals, if there were any, associated with them. Would you ever look into the Alawites? I don't think so. Mostly because the Alawites are a contemporary group, and I really don't cover contemporary esotericism. But also because there's already a great channel that covers that material. That's Philip's channel. Let's Talk Religion. So I think if you want to learn about the Alawites, who are very much in the news these days, you should definitely check out Philip's channel, where he covers that stuff. He covers specifically topics in Islam with a great deal more depth than I would ever be able to. So I would check out his channel. Yeah, so this is a question about the tarot. I don't know anything about the tarot. Tarot is just not something I have any specialization in. But obviously, mapping the tree of life onto the tarot is a thing that people do. I do know that. But again, it's not that the system of 10 Sphirot is the one that's come down to us, but there were other systems that existed prior to that. There's the Yun Circle, you had more Sphirot. And also, it's important to note that the 10 Sphirot have nested Sphirot inside them. And so the configuration that we think of as the typical tree of life, that is an extraordinarily simplified version of the actual way that Kabbalists imagine the Sphirot. Also, the Sphirot aren't like locked into those positions. They're moving and they're relating to each other in all kinds of ways. So when you actually read Kabbalistic literature, which many of the occultists of the 19th century who were developing the so-called Hermetic Kabbalah didn't really understand or didn't really know much about historical Kabbalah, Jewish Kabbalah, they froze them, they fossilized them into place, and so you get the Keter, Bina, Chokhmah, like do. But in actual the Zohar, they're moving around. They're Sphirot nested within Sphirot, and so this is a much more dynamic, much more complicated system. There's a fly flying in front of the camera. But it's a much more technically complicated system. And so this is the reason why when I see things like Hermetic Kabbalah and they're like, oh, you can map on chakras and I Ching and tarot to the Sphirot, I'm like, you can't really if you have a deep understanding of the Sphirot from traditional Kabbalah. So I can't speak at all to the tarot side of things, but from the Hermetic Kabbalah side of things, it doesn't make a lot of sense vis-a-vis traditional Kabbalah, in my opinion. It's a great question. Is a particular reason why you're using the Belinsky-like art? It is Belinsky. It's not Belinsky-like. It is in fact just his art for the Demiurge series. The Demiurge is just about the most frightening concept I think ever developed. Now, the idea that the God who made this world and who runs this world is evil and is actually like feeding on us at some level. The Demiurge and the Archons. There's just no more terrifying concept. Even like the Lovecraftian outer gods, the elder gods, and Azathoth, and that they're kind of like they're still somewhat personalities at some level. You can kind of like at some level they represent something. The Demiurge is just like a cosmic psychopath. It's like Ted Bundy made into a god, and there's something about that so horrifying and so nightmarish that the only artist that I can think evokes that sense of like extreme nightmare town is Bakinski. It's just him. He evokes that sense of like you are in a nightmare and it does not make any sense and it is horrible. And so for whatever reason, his art just seems to like be the perfect fit for the nightmare that is the Demiurge and the nightmare scapes that he's able to develop out of his imagination. So that's the reason why that series is being represented with his art. I guess I hope that makes sense. Thank you, Joshua. Appreciate the super chat. Thank you. Yeah, yeah. You know, this channel is a lot of work. A lot goes into it. I'm the only person that does anything for the channel. There is no. Sometimes people are like, "Thanks to the team over at Esoterica." I'm like, I am the team at Esoterica. I do all the scripting. I do all the editing. I do all the shooting. I do everything. So this is like just me. And so a lot of work does go into it, and I'm glad folks appreciate that. And eventually, I think I may try to like farm out some of the editing to someone who can do a better job than me, and maybe it won't take quite so long because it takes me a while to do it. But yeah, it's just me, and I appreciate the thanks. Hope that's ready for Alchemy Day 211. Yeah, that would be neat if the Absinthe was available for the for Alchemy Day. I will be in Egypt on 211, so I'll be celebrating 211 in the land that gave us alchemy, in the land of Kemet. So I will pour some out for Zosimus and Cleopatra and Maria Hebrea. When's the next excursion sign up? When there's going to be a next excursion, I gotta get this Egypt trip under my belt. In fact, there are 2 back-to-back Egypt trips. I should also mention there's still some room, just so folks know, for the second Egypt trip. If you want to go to Egypt and do the seminar, there's a couple seats that have actually opened up. I might mention this in a video, but there is a chance if you want to join us in Egypt that you still could. And after that, I don't know. Angela Pook and I are talking behind the scenes about doing a lecture / tour / travel in Italy, and maybe in 2026, sort of like Naples, Rome, Florence. We are in the very early stages of that. We just sort of, in fact, it's just sort of the most basic, like we want to do it kind of thing. But if you'd like to join us in Italy, Dr. Pook and I might be tag teaming a kind of esotericism in Italy trip. That, like I said, will go from Naples, where Dr. Pook is from, up to Rome and into Florence. And of course, Dr. Pook would be fantastic because she is Italian. She is a Neapolitan, and she would be absolutely perfect. And it would be so much fun to do that with her. So that might be happening in 2026, but there's a lot of moving parts that have to come into making that happen. But I hope it does. There's nothing else. I'd like to, go to Italy and hang out with Dr. Puka and hang out with you guys. What do I know about the squared circle symbol in regards to Hermetic alchemy? I think Hermetic alchemy is sort of redundant. I don't know where that squared circle picture comes from. I think it's relatively late in alchemical history. Maybe it comes from Basil Valentine. Maybe it comes from Basil Valentine, but I don't know exactly, because I know exactly what image you're thinking about. I think it's the one that actually is on the Wikipedia page for alchemy, but I don't know where that image comes from and why that image has become symbolic of alchemy. There's so many other images I think should be symbolic of alchemy. But how that one's become the one, and you see it on the cover of all kinds of the Kabbalion and all kinds of stuff, but I don't know originally where it came from, and I don't know why it's associated with alchemy. Like I said, the Ouroboros, I think, is a far better image to represent alchemy. But what's also important to note about alchemical imagery is that alchemical imagery is almost always downstream of alchemical texts. By the time you see an image, for instance, the 12 keys of Basil Valentine, those keys were first written out in language and then converted into imagery. The imagery is always derivative of text, almost always. And there's exceptions to this, of course. The Mudus Liber and stuff being another, that's a very late text. But it's always very important that if you see alchemical imagery, you should go try to find where the actual text is for it. Because if you just see the imagery, most people are like, oh my God, the imagery is so weird and evocative and represents the unconscious mind and individuation and the transformation of spirit into this. It probably doesn't represent any of that. And probably what it represents is what the author tells you that it represents, except for no one actually reads alchemical books, it seems. Um, so again, I always recommend that when you see an exotic alchemical image, make sure to go find the first edition of that book where the image isn't there yet, and actually read the text from which the image is derived. Again, the 12 keys of Basil Valentine. If you don't know what those keys, they're just like bizarre, cool alchemical stuff until you actually read the book, and you're like, oh, it's representing this and this chemical and this procedure and this process. And thanks to people like Newman and Principe, we now know a great deal more about what those processes look like. But specifically this image, this symbol, I don't know. But it'll be good. It'll be a fun project to go try to check it down. All right. Super sticker. Thank you, Frank. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. It's a very, it's a kind donation. Thank you. What are my thoughts on Raymond Lull's mysticism? I'm going to do an episode on the at least the Ars Brevis. I'm not going to do it. I don't think I can do an episode on the Ars Magna just because it's so huge. But I'm going to do an episode on the Ars Brevis, and I think mysticism is a strange association with Lull. It's not wrong, but it is strange, but because Lull's really interested in this this combinatorial method by which to basically derive all kinds of truths about reality, everything from theology to plant life. And so I'm going to be doing an episode about it. And also there's really great commentaries on the Ars Brevis by Giordano Bruno and Cornelius Agrippa and several other people. And so I'm interested in this text as a mechanism by which knowledge can be derived through what is basically a primitive computer, but a kind of mystically inclined computer. So I'm going to be doing an episode on Lull at some point, just because it is so absolutely fascinating. So look for an episode probably sometime next year on Raimondo Lull. Was King Solomon and William Shakespeare real people? I would say probably. I mean, certainly Shakespeare was a real person. I don't really buy into any of the sort of weird conspiracy theories about Francis Bacon was really Shakespeare or whatever. Yeah, I think Shakespeare was certainly real. I suspect Solomon was real too. I don't know that we know anything about him from an archaeological point of view, but I do think he probably was a real king. I think David was very likely real. But when we say king, I think translating the word melech as king, especially in the 1000 BCE, I think is a bit of a misnomer. They're more like local warlords. It's like if you were the king of a neighborhood, basically. Jerusalem at that time was a city of 10,000 people max, maybe 5,000 people. It's relatively small. And so king is you think of sort of king of the realm, but really they were local warlords. And I think David and Solomon were probably real, but no, they were certainly not kings of all the realms or anything like that. I think they basically control a tiny area of Judea, probably up in the highlands, and that was it. But yeah, I think they are probably real people. I say probably. I say Shakespeare was certainly real. I think Solomon was probably real, but again, we also have to admit that there's no archaeological evidence for Solomon, although there is some archaeological evidence for the existence of King David. How on earth do you manage to read all your sources, write, film, and edit your videos in just a few days? Because in some sense, I'm not just writing them in a few days. You can imagine I have a huge, store of a lot of stuff from years and years and years and years of studying all this material. And so what allows me to basically write and produce an episode in 3 or 4 days is because I have a huge intellectual backlog, one might say, of information that allows me to work with books and other things that I need to quickly get information out. So part of it is just I can write an episode I can get an episode out in 3 or 4 days because I've had 25 years worth of study under my belt. So that's part of the answer. The other answer is just work. It's just work ethic. I tend to work pretty hard. I tend to get up early. I tend to I get up at 5:30 most days. I get to work before my kids wake up. I also write quickly. I've learned to write relatively fast. Um, I often pre-script episodes in my head when I'm out walking my dog or at the gym, like lifting. And so by the time that I sit down to the computer to write, it's just like it comes out pretty fast. That's not always the case, but um, yeah, I'm a relatively fast reader. I can read. I can tear through, depending on the book. I can tear through a couple books a day, and yeah, it's some combination of work ethic and the backlog of information that I have, and yeah, just doing it. It's a job. I treat esoterica. This is not a hobby. This is my job. I'm a professional YouTuber, whether I like it or not. I do happen to like it, and being that I am a professional person, this is my job, and I think about it as like I got to go to work. I got to get this job done. I have an audience to serve. I have people that I want to do the educational work, and the only way to get that done is by sitting at my desk and pounding the episodes out, and that's just the way that it goes. So yeah, the more that I think the more you treat this like a job, the better, and you want to maintain it to be some degree of professionalism and doing the work. So so that's what I'm doing. So that's how I get it done. All right, looking. Well, this is an interesting idea about doing a time lapse of someone making the bowls. Yeah, I'll talk to the ceramicist that I'm working with on the bowls to maybe she'll do that with one of them to kind of show how long it takes to make one of these. I imagine she's written out this incantation in Aramaic enough times that I imagine she has it memorized. I'm sure she was seeing it in her dreams. Um, and so I imagine at this point she can do them pretty fast, but they're all handmade. They are all handmade. Why did I convert to Judaism? I didn't convert. One of my parents is Jewish, and my mom decided, look, I think I turned 12, and she was like, you're Jewish, and you should go to the synagogue. And I booked you an appointment with the rabbi to go basically sort yourself out. And I think, much to her horror, I found it to be wonderful. And yeah, I really connected to it. It was a very natural fit, and it's been a natural fit since. Although I've vacillated a good bit in my degree of fromness, observance. I've gone from being quite observant, quite from. I was in yeshiva for a while, and yeah, now these days I'm somewhere different than that. But yeah, so it wasn't a question of conversion so much of sort of embracing an ancestry that I didn't know a lot about growing up, and came to know more about it, and like I said, became Baal Shuva, um, and yeah, something like I said, not quite that these days, but still religious in my own way. Um, if someone spoke Enochian, I think people speak Enochian all the time, and people Enochian practitioners read the calls of the Enochian language out loud. I think the language it's most reminiscent of is English. It's basically modeled on English. The phonology of Enochian is English. There are no exotic sounds, exotic vis-a-vis English in Enochian. So there are no glottal stops. There's no voice pharyngeal fricatives. There's no chet or ion. There's no sounds like that. So I think that the language it sounds most like is just English, because it is effectively the language is effectively English, both in terms of phonology and in terms of grammar. It's not structured like Hebrew or Chinese or Sumerian or something. It's structured very much like English, and so I would say that if it's reminiscent of any language, it's reminiscent of English. So when the Inquisition caught a folk magician, usually what books were they caught with? Well, probably none. Most folk magicians would probably not be that inclined to be carrying around a bunch of really expensive books. Books were typically elite. If you had books, you had money. Books are extremely expensive, especially manuscripts. A folk magician, a cunning person, might have a cunning manual, which would be basically a notebook in which they'd keep notes and conjurations and recipes and stuff. So they might have something like that. But typically, I don't know of any good examples of where the Inquisition arrested the folk magicians. I just don't think, because the Inquisition's task was to deal with heretics, and magic, weirdly enough, is not heresy. At least not specific forms of sorcery are not heresy. Maleficium, which involves a pact with the devil, was considered heresy after the 15th century. But in general, I don't know of any cases where the Inquisition could care less about folk magicians. I just think that in general, they they had they had to deal with heretics, and that was a totally different thing to deal with a heretic. So I don't think they would have done it. So I don't think the question assumes, I think, them having books, and I think they would have been unlikely to have books. And I think the Inquisition probably wouldn't have. The Inquisition probably wouldn't have been bothered with them. Will they cover the rest of the Israelite pantheon? Yeah, I'll get to the other deities. I'll maybe do an episode on the Satan, as much as we know anything about the Satan. I'll do, yeah, I'd like to do an episode on the Divine Council and other deities, El, Kother Vachasis. I'd like to do an episode on Anat. So, yeah, I'd like to do this stuff. Joe Jones, is the King James Bible worth the read? I think I guess it depends on what you're reading it for. I think that if you're reading it for its poetic value, it being a text of beauty, then absolutely. I mean, when I die, and and they read a JPS translation of the Bible at my grave, I'm going to be pissed. King James only. In terms of poetry, it is fantastic for that. It's beautiful. So as a work of literature, the King James Bible is absolutely worth reading. But for scholarship, no, not really. So it depends. I would say that if you're reading sections of the KJV for like the historical sections, that's not terribly going to be a good idea. But the Psalms, Proverbs, the Song of Psalms, Song of Songs, yeah, Ecclesiastes, Kohelet, all great to read in the King James Bible. Again, most of this kind of stuff, it's all about what you expect from the text. And if you're expecting the KJV to be representative of good scholarship, modern scholarship, it's not. It wasn't that great. But in terms of its lyricality and beauty, I think that it is unparalleled. The only closest thing to it, maybe the Robert Alter translation of the Hebrew Bible, captures some degree of the musicality and the beauty of the text. But I would say that in terms of, if you just want something beautiful, I would absolutely take a look at the KJV. What is your major disagreements with Archaic's channel? I have no idea what channel that is. Library of the Untold, thank you very much for the super sticker. I really appreciate that. It's very kind. Would you talk about ascended masters? No, probably not. It's an idea that comes from theosophy. And theosophy is like late 19th, early 20th century spirituality and esotericism, which is not really a topic I cover on the channel. But I bet who would make an episode about ascended masters would be Dr. Angela Puka over at Angela's Symposium. So you might want to ask her if she wants to do an episode on the texts. Do you have any opinions on how Iranian the Mithras cult was? I think not Iranian. I think that Mithraism as it existed in the Roman Empire was not at all to the Eastern god Mithra. So as much as we know about Mithraism and general Mithraism, we know very little. But I've done an episode on the Mithras cult, so you can check that out. Um, the first occult book I ever bought. I don't know what one I ever bought. Maybe it was. Oh, I bet I do know actually what the first occult book I bought was. It was probably, and I still have it. It was the Complete Enochian Dictionary by Laycock. So that was probably the first occult book that I ever bought. Although the first occult book that I ever had was a copy of Sefer Yetzirah in the Kaplan translation, and it was actually, interestingly enough, it was given to me by a Catholic priest, Father Brian, who in South Jackson, it was just like a super kind, thoughtful guy that me and a friend of mine used to hang out with, and he would just, he was always around to talk about theology and argue about this, and I could talk to him about Thomas Aquinas because I was a complete nerd. And one day he was like, "Here, you should have this book. It was written by your people, and I can't make heads or tails of it." And it was a copy of Sefer Yetzirah, which I still have on the shelf. So I think the first text I ever got was Sefer Yetzirah, but the first one I ever bought was was the Complete Enochian Dictionary. Do I have any background in formal Kabbalah training, like direct from a Rebbe? I mean, I've studied in yeshiva and I've learned about Kabbalah in a yeshiva environment, but I've ever like directly trained under a rabbi to learn Kabbalah. No, I don't have any interest in doing that really. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I don't have any interest in learning Kabbalah in that way. I mean, I would love to study Zohar in in an Orthodox environment, just because I'd love to hear that. I'd love to see how that goes down. But in terms of being a Kabbalist, I'm not really that interested in being a Kabbalist. History of the Dybbuk box, the totally made up 10 years ago. There are no Dybbuk boxes historically. I think it's an idea that was invented maybe in the 2000s. So it's totally, yeah, totally made up, just recently, past 20 years or something. All right. Jesus existed 2000, 1300 years before the Kabbalah. There's no connection between Jesus and the Kabbalah. Kabbalah was developed primarily in Spain and France in the 13th century. That's obviously 1200 years after the execution of Jesus of Nazareth. All right. Let's see here. Did the dreidel have any religious significance or usage and practices other mysticism? No, it was a gambling game. Still is a gambling game. The whole idea that it's like, was invented. It was a gambling game. It's still a game. I've lost lots of money playing dreidel, high stakes dreidel. But no, I think it was co-opted into Hanukkah at some point, but and only from Eastern Europe. But no, it's just a game for gambling, and not a very good game for gambling. Like I said, I've lost a lot of money on that. Will there be a special broadcast for the holiday of Hanukkah at the end of the month? Definitely not. Yeah, definitely not. Hanukkah is just not that big of a deal. It's only a big a deal in areas in which Christmas is a big deal. Hanukkah becomes the Jewish second fiddle to Christmas. But I've heard that in Arab lands, Hanukkah was a very minor holiday, and it should be a very minor holiday. I mean, who really likes the Maccabees? They're really awful, like forcibly circumcising people in the countryside. I mean, the Maccabees were like the Jewish version of the Taliban. I think that I don't know, celebrating the Maccabees in any way, and the rabbis didn't like the Maccabees either. That's why the Christians have the books. The rabbis didn't even preserve them. So I don't know. I have a very not a great opinion on the Maccabees, and I'm sure they would have killed me gladly. So fume hood for the new studio, that would be a great idea. I would just need 100 square feet to put the fume hood in. But yeah, it would be great to have one. What really would be great to have is a fireplace in here. I just like desperately need a fireplace in the study. It seems like an objectively bad idea to have a fireplace near a bunch of books, but there's something about like the extreme coziness of study plus fireplace. It's just like magic. But I don't think I'm going to be able to put in a fireplace. Um, are you familiar with King James's book on demonology? I am so familiar with it that I literally made an episode about it. So you can check the episode out. Sorry, folks, I'm having some coffee. And not only did I make an episode about the demonology of King James, but Atun Shea, my buddy Andy, dramatized it. He made an entire reading of basically nearly the entire text, and he did it in original pronunciation. So you have to go check out his book on the demonology. But yep, I have a whole episode about it. So am I going to document my Egypt trip with videos? Probably, but I'm not sure exactly how that's going to go down. But yes, probably so. Probably so. I'm going to try to do some version of it. Some version of that, yeah. I'm not sure exactly how, but I want to. Yeah, registration for Egypt says it's closed. How do I sign up for these openings? What you want to do is email me. Go to my website, just justinsledge.com, and there's a contact form on there. Sorry, folks, move around. Shoot me a message. If you want to come on the Egypt trip, like I said, there are a couple spaces open that have opened up. If you do want to come, it's still possible. Just go to my website and just like shoot me a message, and I will get you in touch with the people that can do that. Hank, we're going to celebrate Alchemy Day when we were in Egypt. Yeah, we should do that. That's a great idea. We should have like a because I'll definitely be there. But yeah, maybe we'll have a celebratory toast to all the alchemists while we're on the ground there in Egypt. That'd be a lot of fun. So yeah, that's a great idea. It's a fantastic idea, Hank. Hank is going on the trip with us. It's going to be great. In fact, Hank, I just got finished literally sitting right here. I'm going through the trip itinerary, making the syllabus. So you can see the draft of the syllabus is definitely coming together. So it's really, really coming together quickly. I'm like mining out texts to get into the syllabus for the Egypt trip. So I'm really hard at work putting it all together, and it should all be done relatively, hopefully pretty soon. Let's see. Are the English word translations, for example, splendor and beauty, concepts that remain static amid the nested spherot? So the nested spherot, they, with some exceptions, they do maintain the same names as the spherot themselves. But they'll sometimes, depending on what partsuf they're in, they'll change names, and also the obviously the klipot have different names. But in the Lurian system, and if you ever see what's called a um, um, uh, it's called basically it's a scroll that has all of the spherot and all the little micro spherot inside them. And you can see all of the different ones. There's a couple of examples of them online. There's a great book out now that has all these Ilanat Hagadolo, these big trees, which map out all of these various permutations of the spherot. Thank you. Curious if you have any future plans to discuss the influence of esoteric knowledge being used to influence current events. Definitely not. Definitely not. I don't think that the people in power in this world give much care to esoteric ideas. I think Elon Musk has a much patience for esotericism as I'm sure he has no patience at all. So yeah, I don't think that I don't really have any evidence to believe that esoteric knowledge is having any influence on current events. And also, this channel does not cover current events. Thank God. Thank God. Hey, Mr. Mill, happy holidays. Happy holidays to everybody. I hope folks have again, a very Merry Christmas and Happy Hanukkah and all the things. So, absolutely. Absolutely. What would constitute a 21st century alchemy? Could contemporary chemistry, astronomy, related studies be incorporated into modern spiritual? I mean, there is basically modern spiritual alchemy that has emerged from the occult milieu in the 20th century. But there's no modern alchemy in the sense of a continuation of ancient alchemy, because the worldview that ancient alchemy accepted, whether it's Paracelsianism or the sulfur mercury theory, or the theory of the exhalations in the earth, um, none of those stories are none of those theories are salvageable. The sulfur mercury theory is wrong. The exhalation theory is wrong. I mean, it was shown to be wrong as early as De Re Metallica by Agricola. So there's no way to maintain a belief, I don't think, in traditional alchemy, because the very theories that underwrote all traditional alchemy, whether it's Paracelsianism or Zosimus' alchemy, none of those ideas are tenable, and they weren't tenable even in the early modern period with the rise of corpuscularism and stuff like that. So my sense is that the only kind of alchemy that could survive now would be a kind of spiritualized, intellectualized, psychologized, Jungian style alchemy, in which there is a chemical component, perhaps. But even the chemicals we have access to now, if you were to order sulfur from a chemistry lab, you would get very different sulfur than they had access to back then, because we have very pure ingredients in a way that they never had access back in the day. So, so I don't know. Again, I'm far be it for me to say what people can do as in terms of a spiritual practice. People can do whatever they like, but to think that there could be a continuity from medieval Islamic or Egyptian alchemy to now just isn't possible, because the very theories that underwrote them aren't true. They're simply false. Why did the ancient gods disappear, and why the Judeo-Christian God survived and each became the only God? Well, I mean, I think the Hindus would have something to say about that. There are a lot of polytheists in the world these days, and but why did Christianity become the big religion that it did? Um, I think that there's a lot of reasons for that. One of the reasons for that I think people don't like to acknowledge is that it tells a really good story. Christianity is an extraordinarily good story. It basically is the idea that if you're a kind person and you have faith that a guy died on your behalf, that you get to enjoy the afterlife. You don't have to do any sacrifices. You don't have, because Jesus was the big sacrifice. You don't have to be part of a state cult. Um, you just have to have trust, pistis, that this guy died on your behalf, and you get to enjoy the fruits of the afterlife. And also, from a social point of view, the teachings that the last will be first and the first will be last, and the orientation around love and the idea that you must love your enemies. This was just, I think, just incredibly popular, especially in the Roman Empire at the time. And so I think Christianity beat out a lot of religions, because its message was just popular. Also, they were good at socially organizing. They had the equivalent of hospitals and schools and organizationally very good. The Catholic Church, despite the fact that, or the early proto-Orthodox Church, Catholic Church, it was extremely good at theological compromise in a way that is shocking to think about now. So I think it just, in many ways, it was able to outcompete other religions. Now, Judaism was never going to be popular, never, just because it has circumcision at the base of it. You're never going to get mass conversion to Judaism. And the whole Khazar thing is, it's ridiculous. But you're never going to get a lot of people become Jewish, because it's just like a pain to be Jewish. It's just like an inconvenience, an extraordinarily inconvenient religion. Christianity is the height of convenience. And I even think about a religion like Islam. I think Islam is also popular. It became popular for similar reasons, because it was extremely easy, all things told. In fact, I even think that Quran even says that God has made Islam easy for people. So I think that's at least part of it. Now, of course, also they got an emperor to convert, and you become basically the state cult of of an empire in Twilight. So that doesn't hurt either. But I think the 300 years from the execution of Jesus in the 30s to the to the state adopting it under Constantine, I think that the survival and the thriving of Christianity has so much to do with the fact that it just actually taught an extremely popular message, and it just outcompeted the state cult, and it outcompeted other cults like Mithraism and things like that. So I think that part of what makes it so impressive is it had a good message. It had a good message. Yeah, looking forward to the Merkava series. Yeah, great. Thanks, James. I'm actually going to be redoing my episode on Merkava mysticism a couple weeks, just because it's old and it's not great. It doesn't age well. So if you want some get your Merkava fix, I'll be releasing an episode on Merkava Hechelot mysticism in just a couple of weeks. So so take a look for that when it comes out. You seem to have an interest in esoteric constructed languages. Do you have any interest in modern language creation community? No, not really. Yeah, I'm mostly just interested in the history of the specifically languages that got created in the past. I'm not that much interested in sort of like modern conlang stuff. Not to say that it's not interesting. It's fabulously interesting, but yeah, I'm not really interested in Klingon or Tangwar, Tolkien languages, stuff like that. Mostly just ancient esoteric languages or medieval ones. What's been the most mystical experiences that I've witnessed, either from direct ritual or synchronicity? One man's synchronicity is another man's coincidences. I have had what I would describe as mystical experiences, both in meditation, sort of oceanic ego loss experience. I've had that during meditation, and I've definitely had mystical experiences while on psychedelic drugs, but that's it. I mean, I think those experiences are very interesting, and I think that they're powerful. I don't think that they mean much, but yeah, that would be meditation, and on psychedelic drugs, I've had mystical experiences. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I mean, I've definitely had a heightened kind of a sense of alteration of consciousness during prayer, especially on the high holidays, especially Yom Kippur, when you're like, fasting and on your feet for hours and hours. It's definitely a different mental headspace than sort of normal baseline consciousness. But would I call that a mystical state? It might be, but very mild. It's like a baby mystical state. Baby mystical state. Am I interested in making videos on Zen or Taoism? I'm interested in it, but I'm not. I'm not going to do it because I don't have any expertise on Zen or Taoism. So I don't do religion in general, and I don't do Eastern esotericism. So there probably will not be, unless things fundamentally change, an episode on Shingon Buddhism or something like that. Although I think Dr. Puka recently did an episode on esoteric Buddhism, but yeah, not a thing. Not a thing I would probably focus on. I get a couple more of these. Am I familiar with the sociologist of religion, Robert N. Bellah? No, I don't know this person. Sorry, Anton. I hate when people do. Super thanks and ask me a question. I just don't know. But no, I'm not. I'll look them up though. Don't you think that anarchism, Marxism, and revolution have some apocalyptic vibes? No, they are explicitly apocalyptic. I think they are actually just apocalyptic. Yeah, as much as Marxism and anarchism and other kinds of things pretend to materialism, and maybe they are materialistic, but they are absolutely apocalyptic in their materialism. So yeah, I don't buy for a minute that somehow the dialectical materialism has escaped the clutches of religiosity. It's just a different kind of religion. Um, in the Gnostic faiths, after attaining gnosis, what's the next step to reaching salvation? Is it just waiting to die naturally? Omri, thank you. Thank you, Shabbos. So I would say that from what we can tell, we don't know, it seems like after one achieved gnosis, there were still rituals and teachings and other kinds of things that one needed to do to maintain it, because there's interesting lines that talk about betraying gnosis, which seems to indicate that you can get it and then lose it or betray it. Now we don't know what that looks like because they don't explain to us what that meant, but I would suspect that even after having achieved it, just the way that one achieves samadhi or something in Zen, you just keep, what is it, the before enlightenment you carry water and after enlightenment you carry water. I imagine before gnosis you carried water and after gnosis you carried water, but I imagine there was a continued series of teachings and rituals that probably bolstered one after one had achieved gnosis. But yeah, I do think that you also were just getting ready to die. But that's not also unique to Gnosticism. Remember, I think it was Plato that even said that philosophy was preparation for death, and so that would not be unique to Gnosticism. What do I think of the Ethiopian Ark of the Covenant claim? I think it is probably false. I do not believe that they have the Ark of the Covenant. I believe the Ark of the Covenant was probably destroyed along with stolen and or destroyed by the Babylonians. I think that if it existed at all, which I think it probably did, I think that it was destroyed in 586 along with everything else. I don't think, and even if it were hidden, I don't think it were hidden for long. I think that the Babylonians would have extracted it and um, and taken it. So yeah, I think the entire and we know that, by the way, because well, we conjecture that. I have an episode on this, by the way, because we know that some of that material was still in Babylonian custody because Cyrus gave some of it back when the Jews were allowed to return to Israel. He gave some of it back to them. So we do know that some of the temple artifacts were in Babylonian custody because Cyrus gave it back to them. But I think a lot of the golden stuff would have been just hacked to pieces and melted down. I mean, the Ark of the Covenant, remember, wasn't solid gold. It was boards covered with gold. So I think they would have just hacked that up and burned it and melted the gold, and that'd been the end of it. What do you think about Wes Huff debate with Billy Carlson? I don't think anything about Billy Carlson. Do you think that Japanese or other Pacific folk traditions will have or have started to bleed into Western esoteric traditions? Definitely. Um, Definitely. There's already aspects of that stuff making its way over. And of course, with the yoga and other stuff, I mean, some of Crowley's best books that he ever wrote was on yoga. I think those books have stood the test of time. So I would say that stuff has definitely already made its way over a century ago. But I think specifically Japanese stuff, probably via anime, absolutely is um, making its way in. Modern Hermeticist in the chat. Good to see you, Dan. Yes, if she's beautiful, she is not faithful, and she's faithful, she's not beautiful. Yes, that's just true of translations. They're what 2/3 interpretation and 1/3 lies. And Dan would know this. Dan is a professional translator, so of all the people to speak about this, Dan would know. But yeah, it all depends on what you want out of a translation. How did Lamashtu die? She became Lilith. She's still alive. She is still alive. Question: the role of anti-Judaism. Yeah, I mentioned this in the first episode. Yeah, I mean there was definitely Egyptian anti-Judaism that played a huge role in the demonization of Yahweh, and that was a core part of the development of the malevolent demiurge in the Egyptian tradition. So yeah, that was a huge part of it. Now, I should say this: anti-Judaism is not the same thing as anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is basically a medieval European invention; did not exist in the ancient world. Disliking Judaism does not make you an anti-Semite. You can now most people who dislike Judaism probably are anti-Semites, but the one of the most famous people that dislike Judaism who was vociferously not an anti-Semite was Nietzsche. Nietzsche hated Judaism, but he also hated anti-Semites worse than he hated Judaism, and he broke with Wagner famously for Wagner's anti-Semitism. So I think it's very important that when we look back on ancient anti-Judaism, we should not project back onto it contemporary notions of anti-Semitism. I think that's a real mistake. To think of the Sapiens as anti-Semitic or as Simon of Samaria as anti-Semitic, I think that would be a real Titanic mistake. Real Titanic mistake. Unless I'm mistaken, you have a generally materialist worldview. Yes, I am. I am generally a materialist. How is this possible after reading every occult book? I have definitely not read every occult book. Um, but um, but how can you be a materialist after reading a bunch of occult books? You just don't think they're true. I mean, I read a lot of stuff. I read Norse mythology. I don't think Thor's real. So yeah, it's pretty easy to not believe in stuff just because you read it. Have I ever been to any archaeological sites associated with Gnostic communes? No, but I do plan on going to, when we're in Egypt, we are going to go to some sites that are associated, especially with the Western Desert. And those sites may have had some Gnostics living out there, but I've never been like to Nagamati. It's really in the middle of nowhere, and yeah, there's nothing there to see really, and it's really hard to get to. So no, I've never been to like Nagamati or anywhere. Can you explain the Erev Rav and who they might be today? The Erev Rav, or the mixed multitude, were the people that came out of Egypt with the Israelites and the Exodus myth, and they are the whipping boy of the rabbis. They blame everything on the Erev Rav. Everything that goes wrong with Israelites, they blame on the Erev Rav. Which is just the most intellectually and morally lazy thing the rabbis, one of the most intellectually lazy things the rabbis did. I don't think the Exodus is describing actual history. I don't think the Exodus really is, with the possible exception of the Levite Exodus theory developed by Friedman. But I don't think the Exodus story is, I think it's a myth mostly. And so the Erev Rav is part of that myth. And I don't think that they're an actual group of people. It's my favorite black metal band. I can tell you what I've been listening to a lot recently, and that's Panopticon. I've been listening to their album Autumn Eternal for a while. I listened on repeat during the autumn time. We're now out of the autumn, I suppose. Listening to Drucht. It's like Ukrainian black metal, but I think they're fascists. I think their drummer died actually fighting against the Russians recently. But just because they're fascists doesn't mean they can't make good black metal. In fact, somehow it seems like you have to be a fascist to make good black metal, unfortunately. But yeah, I like Panopticon. I like Austin Lund's just an amazing dude. He just is fantastic. The opposite of a fascist. Like Wolves in the Throne Room. I think probably my favorite black metal record of all time is like Weaklings, Dead as Dreams. Yeah, like Dead as Dreams is a fantastic record. How do I reconcile my Jewish faith with the academic study? I don't. I don't. To me, I don't need to take my myths literally. I take my myths very seriously. I always tell people it's one thing to play Dungeons and Dragons. It's another thing to think you're an elf. I don't think I'm an elf. I think that my mythology is very important to me, and I think that myth and symbols and communities and rituals are important and powerful dimensions of the human experience, and you don't have to uh, take the myths literally in order to take them seriously. So yeah, it doesn't, it doesn't matter at all, that about what I believe and what I don't believe. Um, Ask about Billy Carson again. I don't know anything about Billy Carson aside from he like just shills all kinds of garbage about Atlantis and I don't know Anunnaki and all this nonsense. I don't know. Uh, if anyone appears on the Gaia channel, you know which way to run. But yeah, I think that he peddles pseudo archaeology and pseudo history, and you literally become stupider by listening to the things that he says. So I would avoid that. Hey, Brennan. Hey, man. Thank you very much. Happy holidays to you too. Brennan's a great guy. I got to meet when I was visiting Rhode Island, which is a place in the world that I want to move. I think I desperately want to move to Rhode Island because I'm completely ridiculous. It's actually really beautiful there. We were hung out in Newport, and Brennan's just um, it's like the kind of guy that you like meet and like as an autodidact, you just realize like, man, this guy knows so much. And so it was just a lot of fun hanging out with him. In fact, he gave me one of these books up here. Just a really kind dude. So, Brennan, hope we get to hang out with you again, man. I hope we can talk soon. It's a really, really great guy. It's like one of the great things about this channel is you get to meet such cool people. And Brennan, you're definitely on that list of cool people I'm really glad to have met. So, right. Let's see a couple. I gotta be careful, like saying really like there has to be like a Justin Sledge out of context where I just say what must sound like completely insane things. Um, yeah, that please don't quote me out of context, or do actually. Yeah, a suitable toast to alchemists would be has to be something distilled. I mean, it has to be something distilled, Andrew. That would be my guess. I think you would have to be, um, you know, Odavi, Ishkiva, something like that. That'd be my guess. Had to be some kind of distilled spirit. In the video on the investigations into magic, Bel Del Rio, I believe you said some people were caught using it for magic as opposed to Rio's original intent, which was to train inquisitors. What other kind of book were people caught with? If you want an idea of the kind of books that people were caught with, check out my episode on basically a necromancer's library. We have a list of magical books that were written by Trithemius in his Antipalus Maleficorum, and that's basically the who's list of all the major books of black magic and necromancy that you would have had. So if you want an idea of that list, you can check it out. Also, Dr. Stephen Skinner has recently published a translation of the Antipalus Maleficorum, and you can check out his translation. But you can check out my episode where I go through that list and basically tell you sort of what will be on the shelf of a necromancer in the 16th century. Well, so many great questions. I got to make sure to get these super chats before I run out of time. Hey, brother, I'm glad that you made it to a live stream. Thank you so much for that very generous donation. It's good to see you, man. Glad you were able to make it to a live stream. Really wonderful that you made it in. Thank you. How did the law of not boiling a kid in its mother's milk get expanded to all dairy and meat products? There is a rule in Jewish jurisprudence, halacha, that that in general you can always make the rule. You can typically make a rule stricter, and so that rule was simply made stricter, called a siag Torah, where in order to protect the sanctity of a particular Jewish law, you expand its stricture. And this is an example where the Siag Torah was expanded and it's called a fence around the Torah. So, for instance, you're not allowed to write on the Sabbath. And as an instance of Saglatora, they also say you shouldn't even pick a pencil up. You shouldn't hold a pencil. And so it's just an example of these kinds of additional strictures in which the Torah is expanded in order to maintain not violating it. I wonder if the Karaites eat meat and milk. Because this is the kind of thing that the Karaites would have thought were silly. But I wonder if they eat meat and milk. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know about that. I'll ask the Karaites. Right. David Walker. Thank you. Thank you, David, for the super sticker. I appreciate that. Sorry, folks, I'm scrolling through the list. So I've done episodes on this, on how Solomonic magic developed, but there's clearly an idea already in the Hebrew Bible that Solomon knows a bunch of stuff, and he knows about herbs and gems and stuff, and that just gets expanded in the literature. The sort of the you can think about it like fan fiction. There's all this Solomon fan fiction that gets written, and eventually one of the things he knows a lot about is demons. And by the Testament of Solomon, he knows a lot about them because he's able to control them and make them build the temple. So it's just like an expanding circle of fan fiction about Solomon that ultimately comes to include all the magic business. Master Algae, thank you for the super sticker. Happy solstice to everybody. Yeah, especially for folks for whom the solstices are of religious and spiritual significance. I really do wish that it is nice. It is nice to know that this will be the longest night of the year, and therefore, after tonight, we will start getting light again. So here's to the end of the darkness and the beginning of the light. Who would you pin as the most hated figure in Western esotericism and the most widely accepted, particularly involving the more occult practices? I mean, I'm pretty sure that the most hated and the most accepted is Aleister Crowley. Aleister Crowley seems to either you love him or you hate him or both somehow at the same time. But certainly I would say it's Crowley. That no one really hates Agrippa, Edward Kelly. I mean, no one really hate Paracelsus. So I don't think. I mean, yeah, I would say that's Crowley. Crowley seems to be the character that people have very strong feelings about. I don't think anyone has especially strong feelings about, I don't know, Simon of Samaria or something. But yeah, so I don't think that would be my guess. But yeah, that'd be my guess. By apocalyptic, we mean here the idea that there's going to be some titanic event that will have an event that will the titanic event that will alter the course of history or bring history to a conclusion. The revolution, that there will be the revolution, and after revolution there'll be some kind of utopia. That's just straight up apocalyptic thinking. Not entirely. Yeah, it's to me that is absolutely a religious impulse. Have I read any work by Dr. Bart Ehrman? Yes, I have. Lost Christianity. It's just like right behind me, right there. So yes, I've read lots of things by Dr. Ehrman. I think I've even met him once. Maybe he came to my college when I was there. I'm pretty sure I met him. Maybe I met him at the AAR or something. I don't know. But yeah, yeah, I've definitely read books of Dr. Ehrman's. Great stuff. Would I ever make an episode on Deleuze like the one I did on Mishima? Maybe. There's the book out, the Hermetic Deleuze, which is, I think it's upstairs. That I had. Maybe, I don't know. Yeah, maybe. I read a lot of Deleuze in graduate school, a lot of Deleuze, and a lot of Guattari. In fact, I almost wrote my dissertation on Guattari, just because I find Guattari to be extremely interesting on his own. And I like Anti-Oedipus. I don't like A Thousand Plateaus. I think A Thousand Plateaus is a very bad book. Um, but uh, but yeah, maybe I do an episode on Deleuze. Do I have any advice for someone trying and struggling to study Lacan? Yeah, I hear you about trying and struggling. The best book to explain Lacan in a very straightforward way is, let me see, I have it right here. This one? No, that's the biography of Lacan. Yeah, this one I think is the best one. Hold on. Keep my Lacan close. He lives by all my mystic ladies. But I should keep him away from the mystic ladies. This is the best book I think for like getting a good grasp on understanding Lacan, and it goes all the way up to his all his topology stuff, which I think really goes off the rails. But this is it's by Sean Homer. This is the Rutledge Critical Thinkers. But this is the best book, best introduction to Lacan. And then after that, I would go to the seminars, specifically the seminars on like feminine sexuality. I think those are some of the clearer ones, and then maybe dare into the Écrits. But the Écrits is just impossible sometimes. But I find his early seminars, especially seminars in like the 50s, to be much more approachable. So those would be the places where I would go to study Lacan. The other book I would actually say to study Lacan is Rossi's 2-volume collection, The History of Structuralism. And that's just a fantastic set of books in general. But the chapters on Lacan in the 2-volume Rossi history of structuralism are also fantastic. So it's a way of getting into Lacan that is a little more comprehensible than trying to read the guy. Do you know what Diodorus meant when he said the Celts looked like wood demons? As in, was it tied to a specific understanding, or was he just being generally xenophobic? I don't know, Shauna. This is a very particular and very interesting question. I don't know exactly where he refers to them as wood demons. I imagine the word has to be daimones. But I don't know. I'm sorry. This is another place um, where I don't have a good answer. I don't know this reference. Do you have the reference? If you can share the reference, I can go look in the Greek or the Latin or whatever it is and take a look at it. But I don't know. I don't know the answer to this question. All right. What is the gnarliest rituals in the occult? I think they have to be some of the stuff in Picatrix, right? I mean, Dan, would you agree? Like this, like all this gnarly stuff about killing animals and the Picatrix. It's like all this constantly killing animals, hoopies and stuff like this. So I would say that the most gnarly, like blood magic stuff, is probably in Picatrix. Most medieval stuff is really tame. Um, but again, I say it's gnarly, but like we murder animals by the billions today to make clothes out of their flesh and stuff. So I imagine that whatever evil magician got up to with an animals, um, probably nothing compared to industrial animal agriculture. Hey, Justin, another Justin. Want to know your opinion on Draugodroten by Indy Blackwood. I have never heard of this book. I don't know what it is about. I would have to look it up. But thank you for the super thanks. I do like the fact that you have a carrot in your icon. But yeah, I don't know this book. I'll look it up. I will look it up. Can you explain Genesis creation of man verse when God said, "Let us create man in our own image"? It's probably a reference to the divine council. That it probably was the case that the writer of that text imagines that Elohim is like the chief god of a bunch of other sub deities, and that the divine council was co-creating reality. So it's probably a reference to that. I don't think it's the divine, the royal we or whatever. I think it's literally um, speaking on the behalf of on behalf of the divine council. Yeah, Andrew, how is your translation of Isabella Cortesi doing? Are you translating that from the Italian or from the German? Because there was a German translation, but I wasn't curious if how that translation's going. If you're translating it from the original Italian or the German. How fluent am I in Latin? My Latin is pretty good. I'm not. I'm no Dana Trill, but I read Latin okay. It depends on what it is. If it's like relatively crisp and clear Renaissance Latin, which is what I've been reading a lot of, that's relatively straightforward. But you know, you hand me a speech of Cicero, and I'm not sure how much of it I'll be able to get through. But my Latin is pretty good. It's pretty pretty good. Scrolling through, just seeing some questions, folks. How long have I been on? Hour and a half? Yeah, might be on for like 15 more minutes or so. Uh-oh. Yaldabaoth is in the chat. At least Yaldabaoth pays me $5. Thank you, Yaldi. We are down here suffering, as is your design. So thank you for making a prison that is so terrible. But I do appreciate you giving me $5. Thank you. Yaldabaoth, everyone. The Demiurge is in the chat. There's definitely people in my comment section that definitely hate Agrippa. Why do they hate Agrippa? Why in the world do you hate Agrippa? He's the most earnest guy ever. He's like the emo occultist. Maybe you have a bunch of scholastics in your channel, in your comments. The scholastics are tired of Agrippa claiming that that they're all devil worshippers. The satanic dialectic, which absolutely should be a band name. Is there a connection between the Ark of the Covenant and rainbows? Could an interpretation be that the divine seat was a rainbow that Adonai stepped on, with the cherubim serving as a place where the rainbow forms? I don't know. I don't know this if what kind of connection there would be between the Ark of the Covenant and rainbows specifically. Um, I know the Ark of the Covenant is covered in a weird cover called the Tachash, which is not clear what that is. It's sometimes even translated as like dolphin skin, where you would get dolphin skin in the middle of the deserts beyond me. But sometimes it's associated with rainbows. So maybe it could be the idea that that this is like a that the Ark of the Covenant is kind of a throne where the presence of Yahweh would dwell. But I'm not exactly sure the connection with rainbows. That's an interesting question, though. Hey, Stephen, have I ever used AI apps for research or for any reason? Books may find this shocking. I've never used AI ever. I've never chatted. I've never done anything with ChatGPT. I don't like AI art. I find AI art like, I don't know, for folks who've ever taken LSD, if like AI art always reminds me of like how things look weird in LSD, um, like uh like like everything becomes part of the uncanny valley. Like everything looks okay but slightly wrong. AI gives me that sort of LSD like a flavor of effect, and but I'm not a particular fan of that effect, and so I don't like AI art, so I don't muck about with it. But yeah, I've never done anything with, you know, with an LLM or any other kind of AI. Um, um, Not that I'm opposed to it. It's a technology. I'm sure that there are responsible and irresponsible ways of using it, but I've never used any AI. The ghost. Thank you. Oh, this is the gnarliest occult ritual. Yeah, I think it was. I think as I said, probably something in Picatrix. Favorite Greek philosopher? Do you mean the one I think is the most likely to be right, or the one that I like the best? Um, it's like snowing outside. It looks really beautiful. Um, I don't know. Chrysippus, maybe. Chrysippus is a favorite, even though we don't know a lot about him. The funnest one to read about, of course, is Diogenes. Um, but I don't know. I think these days the philosopher that I really come back to over and over is Parmenides. In fact, I sort of obsessed over Parmenides so much that I ultimately had to make a video about him. So yeah, I'm pretty interested in Parmenides. I was reading Heidegger's lectures on Parmenides um, uh, a couple days ago, just because I'm a glutton for punishment, and I still think that the later Heidegger, his lectures on being, being with a Y, Sein with a Y, um, and on Parmenides are some of the best stuff he ever did. So probably that. Thank you for the Adorno. Yeah, I like that project too. I really like Adorno. I like just how absolutely grumpy he is constantly. What do I think of Benjamin? I've not read much Benjamin actually, so I don't have. He's one of these characters where everybody thinks I will have read a lot of Benjamin, but I've only read, I think, the little I did in like a Frankfurt School class in graduate school. Um, but yeah, I don't know a lot about Benjamin. I have read chunks of the Arcades project because I'm really interested in Belle Epoque France and Absinthe and all that. So I've read chunks of the Arcades project, but honestly, I look back on it now and I can't remember anything about it. So if I did read it, I did not read it closely, and it did not make a very strong impression. And that's not to say anything about Benjamin. It just means that I didn't. Probably says way more about me. But I will say that everyone who I've ever met who's really into Benjamin tends to be a really smart, deep thinking person. In fact, my business partner at the book business, Dr. Morgan Meese, I think wrote his dissertation on Benjamin. And he went to the New School, so I think you have to write your dissertation on Benjamin if you go to the New School. But yeah, I haven't read him, but it's the kind of thing that I will eventually get to at some point in my life. Yeah, this is a question a lot of people ask me for about the CAD model of God that a student of mine did for the Shir Kuma, and I don't have it. And the reason why I don't have it is because the email address that I had to use for teaching at that college, it was only for that college, and when I wasn't teaching there, they deleted it. So it was in those emails and got lost. But someone else could do this. Someone else could do this, and I'm happy to work with someone to provide them the text. But we had a student who, for his final project, he took the Shior Kuman, all the different versions of it, and basically put them into CAD and like drew out God's dimensions, given the proportions of Shior Kuman. And it was a super weird. God has a giant head and long fingers and long beard and all this stuff. It's very weird. But I don't have the image anymore. I've since lost it, but it's the kind of thing that someone should recreate. It was a cool project. I was teaching at an art school. I was teaching at MCA, Memphis College of Art, which is unfortunately now closed. But that was a fun project. Any chance we get a list of important but lesser known works never translated into English? Yeah, I could do that. There's a ton. There's an absolute ton of them. You would be shocked to learn how much esoteric material is just not translated into English and does not have modern editions at all. But yeah, that'd be a fun project. Here's all the things to do. Here's all the things to do. I'll grab a couple more before I got to get going. Could you do a video collaboration with Dr. Stephen Skinner? Your wish is already granted. Yes, myself and Rinsep and Dr. Skinner are all going to be coming together to do a video together soon. In fact, Dr. Skinner sent me a copy of the SSM in the mail, gratis, because he is just super kind guy. He sent me the really nice version of it. And not just that, but it is it's signed by the man himself. Where is it at? It's somewhere in here. Yeah, there it is. It's all washed out from the video or whether, yeah, there it is right there. It's Stephen Skinner. So so yes, we're gonna have Dr. Skinner's gonna be on the show here in a couple weeks, and we're gonna be hanging out with him and some folks from Rinsep, talking about Rinsep and also talking about the SSM and Dr. Skinner. So a real honor. What a just a titan in the field. Really an honor to know him and get to hang out with him, and so I'm really looking forward to that. So your wish is granted in advance. You willed it into being. So have I ever heard of? Yeah, I've definitely heard of Henri Bergson. Read a good bit of Henri Bergson, but I've never seen Stephen Robbins' videos on his holographic theory of mind. I don't know much about that. But I do appreciate the super sticker. Yeah, I also would like to do an episode on Bergson, on his theories of temporality and stuff like that. So yeah, that would be a cool thing to do. But I'll check that content out. But yeah, I like, speaking of Deleuze, Bergson. Deleuze wrote a whole book on Bergson, and had a huge his vitalism had a huge impact on Deleuze. So. As a fan of black metal, what bands would you say have the most complex concepts of the esoteric? I don't know. It's funny because I don't really go to my music, like esotericism is so much my work that like I don't want to go and like listen to, like, I'm not going to go listen to Therion or something, or even like Tool. Sometimes like I really don't want I don't really want any Fibonacci sequences in my music today, guys. So I don't really know the answer to this question because I don't really go to that music so much for like esoteric-y stuff. I don't know. The band Abigail Williams comes to mind. There's a band that has a lot of interesting philosophical material in it. The lyrics are very interestingly philosophical, but I'm not sure it's like esoteric. But there has to be tons of them. I just don't know about them. I can't even read Umberto Eco because it feels like work. Which I know is going to make some people angry that it's hard to read Umberto Eco, but I'm like, why am I reading this as leisure? This is not leisure. This just feels like I'm doing an esoteric episode. Although I do like the fact that he makes fun of esoteric people. Like I feel like I would be a protagonist in one of his books, and I would be like the butt of the joke. And I would deserve that. Be an honor to be made fun of by Umberto Eco. All right. A couple more before we. Okay, Shauna, thank you for this. I'm going to look this up, and I'll let you know. If you can shoot me a message just on my website so I can get back to you, because I hate that you did the super thanks, and I don't actually have yeah, I don't have the answer. But yeah, you message me and I'll try to look this up. Mostly from the German. I got you, Andrew. Nice. Is Angela working on a translation of Cortesi? That'd be cool. Yeah, that'd be interesting to know if she's working on a translation of Cortesi's Secrets. Have you heard this theory that she wasn't really real? That the almost the exact same book was published just a little bit before Cortese published it, and it flopped. And then he rebranded it as written by this Isabella Cortese, and then the book was very successful. But no one can find any evidence of Isabella Cortese even existing. So it seems like he made her up, and I think even her name is an anagram for his name, and and so there's good reason to believe that he's just clever marketing, and that Isabella Cortese never actually existed, which is just a fantastic theory. It seems right to me. Seems right to me. The surprising longevity of many occultists. You would think of more than were burned at the stake. Yeah, this is I think this is born out of somewhat of a misunderstanding about the nature of how the Inquisition dealt with um, sorcery. Again, the Inquisition very rarely got involved in sorcery trials. You'd have to really engage in something like making a pact with the devil and then committing heresy in order to get the Inquisition's attention. But I mean, it did happen. It happened to Cecco d'Ascoli and Bruno. But again, they burned Bruno not because of his like infinity of worlds belief. They burned him because mostly he committed heresies vis-a-vis Mary, and he was a priest. Right? He was a renegade priest, and so he had committed heresy, and they burned him for that. So um, people like Agrippa, you might get their attention, but you could get out of it. Agrippa got out of it. John Dee was never arrested by the Inquisition, although I think that if he'd gone to Rome, he would have been. But the Inquisition just didn't really target sorcery. It was just not their main thing that they were concerned about. They were mainly concerned of chasing heretics. Again, sorcery just did not scare the Inquisition. Spiritual Franciscans scared the Inquisition. Apostolic poverty is what scared the Inquisition. So it scared the church. And if you were out there preaching that the church had to be poor, they were coming for you. But you could say all day long, this is how you summon demons. And they were like, yeah, and if you do it, we're going to arrest you. But the moment you said the church should be poor, like Christ was, then you would get in serious doo-doo. Right. Yeah, I'm curious. What do folks think about AI art? Am I wrong about this? Does anyone else just like dislike it the way that I do? I mean, again, I'm not. It's part of the future, and I don't want to be a complete luddite, even though I am largely a luddite. But does anyone else have the opinion, like a negative opinion of it? I don't know. Um, maybe I'm wrong about this, Dan. Um, yeah, um, yeah. I feel the same way, Dan. I don't know. I'm not a big, I'm not a big fan of it. Yeah, Charlotte, yeah, it has all the uncomfortable weirdness of an AI. See, I totally agree with you. I absolutely feel like I don't know for how many folks have ever taken acid, LSD, or something like 4-ACO DMT. It feels like that. It looks like that, and I don't know. It has that weird uncanniness um, feeling that I'm not a big fan of. I guess I shouldn't ask how many people in the chat have taken LSD. I imagine though that's a pretty ubiquitous thing among this crowd. Um, um, Yeah, it's just funny that other people seem to have the experience too. That the LSD does remind them of AI art. I'm glad that I'm not the only weirdo. I'm glad that there are other weirdos that have a similar feeling. Yeah, thank you, BB Buster. I appreciate the couple pounds. Every little bit helps. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Um, all right, getting a couple more super questions. Skinner and Super Nintendo Sledge. Yeah, that I think that was one of my favorite Ralphisms. Uh, Principal Skinner and Super Nintendo. Yeah, I think so. We can do steamed hams. Steamed hams. Thank you, Josh. The footnotes and translation. Hey, you can thank Dan. Dan really killed it with the notes and with everything. Just a real honor to work with Dan on that project. It was really a lot of fun to sort of work with someone that you respect and also your good friends, but also like we worked well together. Just so folks know, that is absolutely not a given about academics working together. Often, you can really not get along with people that even if you respect them, you cannot really work well with them. And I felt like Dan and I, it was very lucky that we worked well together. And I am really proud of this Agrippa project. In fact, on the next live stream, not this one, but on the next one I do in a couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, I'm going to give away 3 copies of the Agrippa book. I'm going to sign them and give them away. So come register or enter to win a signed copy of the Agrippa book. I wish I could get some signed by Dan and me and myself. Both together. Yes, Dan, I know In the Name of the Rose is awesome. I didn't say it wasn't awesome. I just said it felt like work. It felt like work. It has to feel like work to you. And again, maybe it's because like you get the feeling of like, I know that he knows that I know, and we're on the end joke. We know medieval scholasticism, and that's like a world that we swim in, but it absolutely feels like work to me. Absolutely feels like work. Rationalized Ian Nasir as an upstanding salesman. I don't know what this means. Don't know what this means. But thank you. I appreciate the super sticker. All right. All right. A couple more. An episode on the Rosetta Stone? Probably not, Genghis. I don't think so, because it's not really esoteric. It's just like a royal pronouncement that happens to be in Demotic and in Egyptian. But no, probably not. I think it's probably not really esoteric related. What's the best biography on John D. Edward Kelly and Agrippa? Unfortunately, the best one on Agrippa is going to be The Crisis of Renaissance Salt. Yeah, it's hard to get your hands on. You can find them like Anna's Archive, though. So if you want to read it, it's the best. If you email me, I can send you a link to a copy, a digital copy. Best biography of D. and Kelly, probably Harkness, Conversation with Angels. There's an entire article that's just a biography of Edward Kelly. I have it somewhere, but there is an article that's just a biography of Edward Kelly. So that article will be the best on Kelly, but I think the whole D and Kelly stuff is best covered by Harkness and Conversation with Angels. Eagle Aspirum also has a good book on the D. Kelly stuff, but it's mostly about the uptake of Enochian into a culture. But those are typically pretty good. Good Bunny. Russell's in the chat. I'm gonna be hanging out with him, thank God, in a couple of weeks. Russell and I go back to middle school. Where did we meet? In like art class? I think we met in art class. But yeah, I'm going to hang out with a very, very dear friend here in a couple of weeks. I'm really looking forward to that. All right, folks. I am glad that other people think that the AI stuff looks like LSD stuff. I do find that I do find it hilarious that but I'm glad I'm glad this is not a thing. Yeah, Spanish occultism. This is a great question. One of the things I'd love to do is do an episode on alleged schools of magic that existed, and allegedly everyone seems to believe that there was a school of sorcery in Toledo and in Salamanca, and it'd be fun to do a history of these schools of magic. And in fact, Del Rio even mentions that when he was in Spain, he went to a building that a cave that had been sealed up by whatever her name, Princess of Aragon, and that it was actually an old medieval school of magic, and and he saw it allegedly, and I don't think he was lying. Um, so yeah, and also like what's the name of the school of magic that Dracula went to? That's totally slipping my mind now. But Bram Stoker just has this like throw off moment where he's like, "Oh yeah," and Dracula studied sorcery at whatever the name of that college is. Um, so yeah, it'd be fun to do an episode just on um, alleged schools of magic at Toledo and Salamanca and places like that. All right. Oh yeah, this is also a good one. You're right, Dan. This is a good one. Glenn Perry. I got to meet him once. He's a really nice guy. Also, I think he's a Welshman, and Dee took great pride in being a Welshman or of Welsh descent. Any plans to do a video on Reconstructionist Judaism? Probably not. That's just folks know that's the branch of Judaism that I belong to, Reconstructionism. So, but I probably won't. It's just like so too navel gazing. Now, if there's the Reconstructionist movement wants to have me on and talk about it, I would love to do that. But yeah, I would happy to talk about that on a Reconstructionist channel, but not. Got it. Second, folks, I got to text back my wife. Talk amongst yourselves. Right. What was about In the Name of the Rose you're working on? Oh, I'm not working on. I was just saying that reading In the Name of the Rose felt like work. I felt like I was like it was like at work, doing esoterica work. But well, I do a dive into the philosopher Rene Descartes. I kind of did early on in the channel. I'm going to remake that video where I made a video just about how Cartesianism or so-called rationalism actually has its origins in basically a mystical dream that Descartes had. So I did that episode. I'll probably redo it at some point. But yeah, I've done an episode at least on Descartes, on Descartes' magic. Does anyone know the name of that school? Yeah, there it is. Trollomance. There it is, Josh. You got it. That's the school that Dracula studied at, the School of Sorcery in the Carpathian Mountains that Dracula studied. That Dracula studied at. So, yep, we'll do an episode on the Basque witch trials. Yes, there's the translator of Martin Del Rio's Investigations in the Magic has written, I think, one of the best books about the Basque witch trials. And the Basque trials are especially weird in a lot of ways. So yeah, that would be a cool one to do on just the specific Basque witch trials. That's a great idea. This is exactly the kind of place where if I ask, what school of magic did Dracula study at, there's going to be 15 people who know the answer. See, this is why I love you guys. This is the reason why I absolutely I love this crowd of people. Renewal Judaism, nah, that's for hippies. I'm being around all the hippies. No, I'm kidding. The renewal movement's wonderful, but it is a lot of hippies. It's not for me. Reconstructionism is like the nerdy version of Judaism. All right. Oh, we got somebody from the Carpathian Mountains. Yeah, Andre, you can go study there at Trollomance. I want to go to the Carpathian Mountains. I am definitely Reconstructionist. I'm definitely not Haredi. um, yeah, I'm definitely not Haredi. Although I did spend some time in the Orthodox world in yeshiva in the Holy Land, and by the Holy Land I mean Brooklyn. So I did study just down the street from 770 Eastern Parkway at the yeshiva Hadar Torah. So I know that world a little bit, not as well, of course, as someone like my good friend and colleague Zevi, who grew up in that world, but I definitely had a touch of it. Definitely have a touch of it. All right. The Holy Land of Brooklyn. Of course, the Holy Land is Brooklyn. Israel is just a suburb of Brooklyn. Not a very nice suburb. All right, folks. I'm gonna talk more about the Corpus Hermeticum, probably. Probably at some point I want to remake my episode of the Corpus Hermeticum. If Christian Wilberg ever releases his critical edition, we're all gonna be making new episodes about the Corpus Hermeticum. Because if Christian Wilberg is right, we all have the Corpus Hermeticum profoundly wrong. So yeah, it'll be a whole thing to do once his edition comes out. So all right. Oh yeah, you live in Bukovina. That's like deep. It's like near like Satmar country. I think that's where the Satmar Rebbe comes from that area, I think. Um, no, this is like more Amon Hillman stuff. What a complete, yeah. All right, folks. Yeah, the Corpus Christianiorum. Yeah, I'm looking. Oh yeah, speaking of which, Dan, I got a question for you. I'm gonna email you after the chat. I have a Hermeticism question for you. Well, folks, I just want to say thank you for all the folks who showed up. Like 500 and something people in the chat today. It's a big crowd for 1 o'clock in the afternoon on a Friday or whatever. That's thank you. And I know that I don't typically release videos after a live stream, but I have a video on the dock. It's going to come out right as soon as I finish this live stream. So take a look for that. Yeah, I guess I'll just say this. Thank you for everybody who showed up. We got another. What do I think about multi-language subtitles for esoteric episodes? I would love to do them. I would love to have more subtitles in other languages, especially a Brazilian seems to be a one, or Portuguese. Portuguese seems to be an important one because there's a lot of folks from Portugal, from Brazil that watch the channel, but Spanish also would be a great one to have. And so that's a good idea. I would like to do that. All right. All right, folks. Well, again, I guess what I want to end on is, we're coming into the holidays, and I'm really hope everyone has a fantastic Christmas. I hope you have folks who celebrate Christmas, very Merry Christmas. Chag Sameach to folks who are celebrating Hanukkah. Yeah, I hope everyone has a fantastic holiday season. I'll see folks before the new year, I'm sure, in some form or fashion. And yeah, I'm just really grateful for this amazing crowd of folks, and just fun hanging out with you guys. I wish we could all, rent out a tavern or something and all sit down and play Dungeons and Dragons and kick it and have a few drinks together or whatever. It'd be fantastic. So yeah, thank you guys for being such an awesome group of people and such a wonderful crowd of folks to hang around with. Thank you for all the very wonderful questions. And yeah, I hope to see folks soon. Look for an episode next week on the Chaldean oracles, and then, who knows what comes next? I'm not even sure, but Yeah, I hope everyone is doing well. I hope everyone has a great a great holiday, and I'll see folks at some point soon. Thank you guys so much. Have a great evening.